Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome everyone to episode 237. How are you doing today?
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm always feeling good when we start a podcast.
I know, this is going to be a really fun one. Today's podcast topic is on the gentle ultimatum. Can we make our patients accountable?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good title, too.
Can we? Should we? How can we?
Right. This is a very controversial topic. And one of our goals here with the podcasts is talking about team therapy. And when we started with Fabrice, we were just doing techniques every week. And now we have all kinds of fun topics to do. But I want us to get back on some of the podcasts to techniques. And this is both for therapists and for the general public, both. And those of you who are in the patient role or the curious role or the therapist role, I think there will be a lot of meat for you and a lot of controversy and hopefully some excitement and interest as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a really interesting topic. Let's start off by making an announcement about the next workshop you're doing with Jill. That's available to therapists and the general public.
Yeah, see, the workshops that I do with Jill are sponsored by the Feeling Good Institute, as you know, and I give them tremendous support. I also give your Feeling Great Therapy Center tremendous support, too.
Yes,
I'm a big supporter of both and have no affiliation with either, so I kind of try to keep out of other people's business and other people's hair, but I think you're both doing a fantastic job. But one of the rules that the Feeling Good Institute has when they sponsor workshops is only therapists can attend.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so they have to turn away a lot of people. And when I was doing in-person workshops here and there, and people said, "Oh, can I attend? I'm not a therapist." I always said, "Oh, yeah, you can sneak in, and no problem. I teach at a very basic level." But at any rate, the one that's coming up, the small group practices will be such that the general public, as well as therapists, will be able to participate in them equally well. And so we're going to open it up to everyone. Now, this is the live therapy workshop. It's a workshop I've always wanted to do. And Jill and I will treat 2 people live in this workshop and illustrate. Of course, you know what that's like because you and I have done it, and we've done it on podcasts. We do it in the Tuesday group. But it can be pretty amazing as well as inspiring personally and really helpful professionally to see how team therapy works, especially if you're working with someone who starts out the session pretty disturbed and ends up the session dramatically improved or even completely symptom-free. And then you can see exactly how this high-speed change happens. Why? How does team work? What is the secret sauce that leads people to sometimes have a complete recovery in a single session? But it's also just fun and inspiring. It's a bit exciting because Jill and I will be. It's like a high wire act without a net. We're doing actual live therapy with people, although we will think of it as a personal growth experience. We won't enter into an ongoing therapeutic relationship with whoever the volunteers are.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll definitely be doing what is exactly the same as real therapy. So if you're interested, and it's not that expensive either. I think it's something like $137 for
135.
135 for the full day. You'll get 7, I think, hours of CE credit if you're a mental health professional. And either way, I think it will be dramatic and fun and rewarding and exciting. So this is your chance. And if it works out, maybe we'll be able to structure other workshops and activities for the general public as well. Because my mission is not just to teach therapists, but to bring help to our fans, most of whom are general public.
And you didn't mention what day it was.
Oh, yes. It's May 16th. It'll be on a Sunday again. So it's coming up pretty soon. Again, register early if you're interested, because we were almost sold out on our last workshop, and we had the capacity for 500, I think, was the maximum that the Zoom could hold, and it was way beyond any previous. I think we had almost 450 people there.
Wow!
And I know when they started out, they were only getting maybe they thought 45 for a Sunday workshop was a big deal. So it could be going, easily beyond 500.
Wow.
Depending on the interest, of course. And so if you think you might enjoy this, it could be an experience of a lifetime. So register early.
Oh, I've seen you do personal work with therapists at every institute. When you did the institutes every summer.
The intensives.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they are definitely life-changing. And they're very enervating. They're energizing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You see people crying at the start and often laughing uncontrollably at the end. You see someone's life change. This is not a superficial thing. This is a transformation of the human spirit. When it's effective, we can't, guarantee that result every time, but it almost always happens.
Well, what could someone do if they wanted to volunteer to be the patient?
Well, one fellow already contacted me. One rule is you have to be a mental health professional, because we don't want to get with legal entanglements or ethical entanglements of entering into what looks like a genuine therapy with someone from the general public. And it has to be something in the range of depression and anxiety. If you're mad at your spouse or something, that's not going to be the focus of the work we do. But anything in the area of depression, anxiety, feeling like you're not good enough would work really well. Mm-hmm. So you can email me if you're interested.
And your email address is david@feelinggood.com?
Yeah, that's it. You nailed it, lady.
Why do I have that memorized? Well, let me read a couple of endorsements, and then we'll get on with our topic of the gentle ultimatum.
Thank you, Rhonda, at feelinggreatinstitute.com or at feelinggreattherapycenter.com.
Yeah. Okay, well, we did episode 231 about nature hikes with Philip Lalonis, and then somebody sent us the sweetest email. So she wrote us, "My 7-year-old uses the 5 secrets that she learned with Philip on me." And she still talks about Philip's walks and all Philip taught her about Mount Diablo. And she wants to take her uncle on her walks. So I want to thank Philip for everything that he's done for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. And by the time this podcast is broadcast, part 2, Philip, will have been published. But that was a beautiful one too, where he talked about his brother and the tragedy of having your brother, I think 6'4", 6'6", handsome, intelligent, witty, athletic fellow, suddenly develop schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And just
well, you're talking about episode 233.
Yeah, and it's just a horrific disease. I used to see many individuals with schizophrenia when I worked at Highland Hospital in Oakland, a big county hospital, and they would be coming into the emergency room with, just full-blown psychotic, and it just a horrible disorder. We don't know the cause. We don't have a cure. There are some medications can be helpful. Gentle psychotherapy, just support, can be appreciated greatly. I have a man with schizophrenia who's been emailing me for really, at least a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, and he emails me about 2 or 3 times a day.
He emails you 2 or 3 times a day?
Yeah, and I always email him back, just about every email, and they're very short and warm and supportive, and he really appreciates it. And yeah, I don't try to do anything real fancy, but it's hard. He's alone, and he would like to have a girlfriend, and he doesn't have much by way of work or resources, and he says he's not real good looking, and it's just hard. Our society is kind of based on looks and achievement, and it's sad because he's got a heart of gold. He's a brilliant guy, and it just makes me feel good to be able to send him a little warmth. A few times every day.
Nice.
And
that's a kind and generous thing for you to do too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's helping me because he tells me how much I'm helping him, and I'm really not doing anything very fancy except to kind of be a friend and show respect and warmth and little encouragement.
That's nice. Okay, I'm going to read 3 really short ones on our podcast episode 232, which was Ask David, and the title of that one was Ego Strength, Panic Attacks, Habits and Addictions, High Blood Pressure, and More. And this is a pretty popular episode, and we got 3 endorsements really quickly. One was from Ms. Spock, who is a listener from New Zealand and a member of the Wednesday training group, and she wrote, "Thanks so much for another brilliant podcast."
Thank you, MS Spock, and for all of your support. I appreciate it, and Rhonda does too.
Me too, yeah. And then Mayam Maz, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, he wrote, "I can't understand why your podcasts don't get 1 million views. This stuff is more powerful than all the other self-help gurus combined, in my opinion."
Well, to use the disarming technique,
I
agree. I kind of feel that way too. I don't want to promote that idea too heavily because I'll sound like an ass or a total narcissist, but I think that we're offering fantastic stuff for free. And if any of you out there can help us or know what we can do to increase our audience, we would appreciate it. We're not experts. We don't have, funding for fancy, marketing people and stuff like that. We're doing pretty good though, just with you folks' help. We've had, this year we'll hit our 4 millionth download. So we're making some impact that's, not shabby, but it could be expanded massively. So like if you have an emailing list you're on, you could send them a link to say my website, to the page with the list of all of the over 200 podcasts and, just brief description and links, or, if you have a loved one or a family member, a friend or neighbor who's struggling with depression or low self-esteem, send them our way. And also my website, feelinggood.com, is chock full of free resources for people. There you can go, and there's a free depression test, and you can take it and it'll give you an interpretation. And then if you want, it'll give you a free depression class. The same with anxiety. You can take the anxiety test and get a free and really excellent anxiety class. I think there's about 26 lessons in the anxiety class. And then you'll get, you can take the happiness test. You can take the relationship satisfaction test. There's all kinds of free things, because I know a lot of people don't have a lot of money. And this is not a clever upsell thing. It's not, you can have this little free thing, but you have to pay more for the fancy stuff.
No.
It's just everything is free.
Mm-hmm.
Except for my books, which you can buy on Amazon. But even there, they're not expensive. You can get used copies of Feeling Good, I think, for $2 or $3 on Amazon.
I think so too.
And someone actually told me that they've been doing that, and what they get is first edition hardbounds.
What?
Yeah, which are extremely rare for the first printing. And I don't know, they must have shown up in someone's warehouse and they're selling them for a few bucks a piece on Amazon, and they're very rare, actually.
Okay, I'm going to do a plug for another place you could buy the books. And there's another place called bookshop.org, because I know I don't really like to go to Amazon all the time. And, but anyway, bookshop.org is another place.
Yeah. Or just go to the show notes for this or podcast or any podcast, and you'll find the cover of Feeling Great there. If you're interested, you can just click on it and it'll take you right into the buy page on Amazon, or this books thing that you mentioned, Book Club. Bookshop.com. That's a good one too.
.org.
.org. That's even better.
Well, let me read just one really quick more endorsement about episode 232. And this is from Andrew. And he wrote, I really liked Adam's question about renaming the positive thought column as realistic thought or balanced thought. It was a question that I've been thinking of submitting myself. Thank you, Adam, for phrasing the question much better than I would have. And I thought David's reply was very insightful.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. I love the comments from our listeners. They're such great.
I do too. People are so thoughtful, except for that FU one I got a week ago. But,
let's not talk about that one.
But other than that, 99.9% of them are just so loving and kind and thoughtful.
Okay, well, let's talk about making our patients accountable.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the episode 232 when we were talking about what is codependency. And yeah. I had to admit, I thought my own codependency prevented me from kind of doing gentle ultimatums.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, a gentle ultimatum is one of the unique features of team CBT, and it's quite different from not all other schools of therapy, but I would say almost all other schools of therapy. And it took me a while to warm up to this idea and to finally surrender to it. The reason I thought of doing that is, as you know, Rhonda, we had a question from a younger person who just heard about Team CBT, and he had heard about this concept of telling patients that there are certain things they must do if they want to work with us. And to his ear, it sounded a little like we're telling people my way or the highway, and he quite rightly took umbrage with that, because that would not be good therapy, but just narcissistic mean-spiritedness. But it got me thinking that this is really a kind of an important and exciting topic. And so we can go over the high points of it and then delve into some of the emotional aspect as well. But the origin of this was that when I was in Philadelphia, I did research to try to figure out the ingredients of therapeutic success or failure in the treatment of depression. Because in the whole world literature, although there's probably been 100,000 research articles on depression, I'm not aware of anyone who's found anything with a valid causal effect on depression.
You mean what caused depression, or what causes the relief from depression?
Either one. There's never been a positive research study that said that this causes depression or this really causes recovery from depression. All the treatments have very little other than a placebo effect. That's all schools of therapy so far. We hope TEAM will outdo that. I hope my new app will outdo that. But that's pretty much all she wrote. And people can't point their finger to any specific thing that will make depression worse or make depression better. But I did find something, and I published it in the top psychology journal, research journal for clinical research, and that was psychotherapy homework. That practically every patient at my clinic in Philadelphia who did at least some psychotherapy homework consistently improved dramatically or recovered in the first 12 weeks of therapy. And almost every patient who refused to do homework did not improve or recover. In fact, a lot of them just got worse and dropped out of therapy. Then I've replicated that finding in a variety of ways that I won't go into, but it's pretty much written in stone at this point. And we're also going to test that in our app, by the way, because the app consists of really cool stories and stuff. Oh, here's my kitty. Yeah, sweetie pie. And also exercises that they have to do while they're using the app. But I just found out yesterday that they can skip the exercises. So I said, well, let's count them and see who's doing them and who's not, and see if that has a causal effect on recovery in people using the app. But that's the thing. And so what I did then is I developed the practice of telling patients at the initial evaluation that the kind of therapy we do requires psychotherapy homework to be effective. And so I hope they'll work with us and stick with me. But they should know that this is not negotiable, and that if they're looking for a treatment that doesn't require psychotherapy homework, and many patients are,
right.
That I'm not the therapist. This clinic is not the place you want to come, because that won't work here. And I even created a memo that you know about called the Concept of Self-Help Memo that kind of spells this out to patients, and they have to fill out the memo and tick off all the reasons they don't want to do psychotherapy homework and come to a decision at the beginning of therapy. And the way I present it to patients is that I want you to stay here in the clinic. I want you to work with me. And you've had a lot of therapeutic failures, you tell me. 12 therapists weren't able to help you. And no one's ever asked you to do psychotherapy homework. And I want to be the therapist that changes your life, who changes your life. But to do that, we'll have to work as a team together. And that means you're going to have to do some consistent psychotherapy homework. And if you have the slightest thought that that's unfair or that's not the therapy you're looking for, then let's figure that out right now and not go down that road. And you can find someone in the community who does the kind of therapy you're looking for. And if you ever change your mind, leave and change your mind, my door is always open to you. So it's not kind of my way or the highway. It's kind of the same as you would do in medicine. If someone comes with a broken leg, you would, as a physician, I would explain to them that we need you to go to such and such a location and get an X-ray, and then we'll put a cast on the leg, and here's our treatment, and we're confident you'll do well. But if the patient were to say, no, I don't want a cast on my leg, I don't believe in X-rays, but I want to be treated with prayer, we might say, well, that we don't offer that treatment here. We're using kind of the medical model, and you'd have to go maybe to a church or some religion that specializes in healing through prayer, if that's right. That's what you want. So it's kind of like free will and accountability. And but it's so controversial because most therapists have this urge to help people, and they kind of view patients as needy and helpless and unable to do something like psychotherapy homework. There's a lot of strong feeling among therapists, and I used to have this feeling myself. Like I'll persuade my patient to do homework. I'll find out why they don't want to do homework, and then I'll change that so they will want to do homework. But that never once worked, and it wasn't until I made patients accountable at the initial evaluation that my practice really was transformed practically overnight. And interestingly, most patients had renewed intense desire to work with me and to stay at our clinic. Very few dropped out and said, "Oh, well, I don't want to come to this clinic because I don't want to do it."
Okay, well, I have two questions about that.
Yeah.
So you're automatically taking people who are very motivated. So, it was your initial assessment, but for a patient in private practice, it's perhaps the initial telephone call where you're talking about, what's the therapy that you offer, and is this a good match between patient and therapist?
Yeah.
And if you say to the patient or the person who might want to be your patient or your client, what you just said, if you want to work with me, it will automatically include psychotherapy homework.
Yeah.
The person who is really motivated will say, yes, okay, I want to do that. And
so is this a fact or a hypothesis? Because I know the answer.
I believe this is a question.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, okay.
Isn't psychotherapy, the person who's willing to do psychotherapy homework, isn't that tied to their motivation to get better?
Reviewing this with them and the concept of self-help memo, it seemed that our dropout rate went way down, not up. That almost everybody elected to stay at the clinic.
I wonder. It would be interesting to find out who was the type of person that didn't want to do homework and didn't.
Well, I can answer that too. It's borderline personality disorder.
Why do you say that?
Huh?
Why do you say that?
Well, because I saw it hundreds of times.
Oh.
I never saw a patient with a borderline personality disorder who didn't explode angrily when asked to become accountable. And that was why I began to negotiate this at the initial evaluation before they were my patient, where I used to do a 2-hour evaluation to find out if they wanted to work with me and if I had the tools that would be helpful to them. And this was the most important issue. Now, most of the patients with borderline personality did stay at my clinic. 28% of all of our new patients had severe borderline personality disorder. But we used to just do battle with them endlessly until I made them accountable at the beginning of treatment. So this is the way it works here. And if you don't want it, God bless you. I certainly understand, but then this is not a good choice of therapy for you because it won't work without the homework.
Okay, well, here's where another place where the gentle ultimatum might be able to fit in. What if somebody in that initial assessment says, "Oh yes, I want to do I'm willing to do homework and I want to get better," and then a week or two in, they're thinking, more homework. Oh, I don't have time to read. Oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, he's so demanding.
Well, that's really easy because they've signed a contract, right, that they'll do so many days a week of homework, so many minutes per day. They had to actually write this out in a written contract. And so then when that happened, which happened on occasion, I wouldn't say a high percentage of the time, but it occasionally happened. Then I said, wow, I feel really badly that I think I talked you into a type of therapy that really doesn't appeal to you. And, I hope you'll stay with me. I'd hate to see you leave. But as you know, what we're doing cannot be effective without the homework. And why don't you tell me where you're at right now? And you're telling me maybe you are too busy right now for this type of therapy. And if so, I would just give you all the support in the world. And if a time came in the future that you had time to do the homework, then you could come back and we'll pick up right where we left off. But it was sitting with open hands in a kindly way is the key to it, and not biting. Like if patients would say to me at the initial evaluation, well, I'll try to do homework, but I can't make any promises, then I would just say to them, I'll try is just a polite way of saying, no, thank you, doctor.
Right.
And maybe this is not for you. And that's what I first began to learn, how to take the side of the patient's resistance. And instead of trying to persuade them to do the homework, to sit with open hands and just say, absolutely, I hear what you're saying. I support you. But then again, I'm probably not a good doctor for you, because what you want is, talk therapy that would make your depression go away. And I've never once succeeded at that. So I'm not a good choice for you. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of great people out there in the community. And then if you go to some of them, and I know you've had 12 therapeutic failures, and you say no one asked you to do homework, and maybe you'll find someone really good who can bring you to recovery.
Mm-hmm. Well, you say that with a lot of kindness, but I don't hear any judgment in your voice.
Yeah, that's the key to the gentle ultimatum. That's why it's called the gentle ultimatum as opposed to the malignant ultimatum, which is, to
Oh, I have an example of a malignant ultimatum.
Yeah.
I do, in my past, I was the director of a treatment program for adjudicated juvenile sex offenders, and it was completely based on cognitive behavioral therapy, not team, but a more traditional type. And we had them do homework, and if they didn't do homework, they would get locked up.
Yeah.
So they would flunk the outpatient program and have to go to an inpatient program. And so they were that gave them a lot of motivation. Yeah. And that was definitely a malignant type of ultimatum.
Yeah. Although if they're involuntarily in treatment, my wife, Melanie, who's the brains in our family, she's a clinical psychologist, as you know, says that's the way to go. And she was in the substance abuse program at Kaiser. Mm-hmm. And she started out in their intensive outpatient program, which had a lot of borderline patients, and she was concerned that the patients weren't being made accountable. So she left because she saw that, just letting them do what they wanted, it was not leading to recovery. And that's what she liked about the substance abuse program is the patients were accountable and said that this is what you're going to do, because most of them were court ordered and stuff like that. And then if you don't want to follow the program, you're out of here.
Yeah.
And so that's justified in that situation, perhaps not destined for the greatest success, but at least you can get them going through the motions. I had a couple directions I wanted to go in. One, okay. I wanted to say you had to do this a couple times. I think you said yesterday, and I want to see what that experience was like for you and how you felt, because I can imagine therapists feeling guilty and frustrated and angry, have a lot of powerful feelings fired up about this. And then I wanted to also mention how the gentle ultimatum works for anxiety disorders and relationship problems, because what the demand that we're making there is, well, homework is always a part of it, but there's other unique pieces when you're treating anxiety and when you're treating a relationship problem. Hmm.
So for me, I would have to say that I failed in giving a gentle ultimatum, because I said to my patient, no, I wasn't probably as kind as you are modeling right now. I said a version of, let's talk about why you're, why aren't you wanting to do homework? And I said, all of my clients who do homework get better. And, my client said, don't do homework, don't get better. So I can tell you that if you're willing to do homework, the likelihood of the success of our therapy is going to be greater. So let's talk about homework. And she got really angry. She was really angry at me and said I was blaming her. And
Was this at the initial evaluation or once you, yeah.
No, this was.
That's tough.
This was after working with her for a while. She was trying to reach a goal, and I tried, and I got perfect empathy scores, but she didn't. She just fought me on I did a lot more work than she did, and she did not want to do homework. And whenever I brought it up, she'd say, "Oh, she's too busy, or she can't do it." And then I would try something else. I wasn't.
Oh, yeah, that's what I used to do. And it never once was successful. I tried that on hundreds of occasions until I figured out this gentle ultimatum thing, which was around 1984 was actually the date I published that concept of self-help memo and started sending it to every new patient and negotiating this at the initial evaluation before they're your patient. You see, you have to accept them as a patient. And they have to accept you as their doctor before it's a true therapeutic relationship, although you being a forensic expert might see that that's not exactly correct, but that's the time to do it at the initial evaluation.
I do with that. My experience is that people will say, yes, they'll do homework. And then when it comes down, then a lot of people will do it and feel relief and feel better. And a lot of people will say, well, I said I would do the homework, but I'm finding myself too busy, or it's too hard, or I'm too fragile, or I can't do it. And with this particular client, after she said that to me, like I was attacking her, I gave her a 5 secrets response and said, yes, I didn't say that carefully. And it wasn't, I can hear that it was judgmental, and I feel really bad and regret what I said. But I also think it's okay to not do homework, and it's okay not to be in therapy with me. I mean, it's totally okay. You want to come to a therapist where you can just talk and have a conversation with that therapist. And that's not what I do. I don't even know how to do that. So it's okay if you don't want to do homework to go to somebody else who would be delighted to sit with you and just have conversations with you. And once I said that, we had a conversation about her needs and what her preferences are. And then she agreed. She said, yeah, I don't want to be in therapy with you, and I don't want to have to do homework, and I want to be with somebody else. And I was like, that is so cool. And I can give you names of people that you could be in therapy with and have the kind of experience that you want. And she left. And I honestly, you said, well, how did I feel? I felt a lot of relief. I was great.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when she first said I attacked her, I felt really bad.
Oh, sure.
I didn't handle that well. And I wasn't careful. I wasn't careful in my words and the tone of my voice. But once we finished the conversation, and she ultimately decided she wanted to work with somebody who would not hold her accountable and not make her do homework.
Yeah.
I was relieved.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When I made this decision, it was a huge relief for me too, because I had gone about 8 years at that point in clinical practice and, fighting tooth and nail, trying to figure out how to get these people to do homework who weren't doing their homework. And I must have tried 10, 12, 15 different, homework techniques. Beck created some, Albert Ellis created some, I created some, but they all failed 100% of the time. None of those techniques worked even once. You've heard of Ellis's technique to get patients to do homework?
Well, no, what?
The Ku Klux Klan technique?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, well, what he used to do, and I actually tried it once. That's
a terrible name for a technique. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's a perfect name. He said that they had to give him something like $100 bill, and then he would put it in an envelope. And it had to come with a note. This is an appreciation for your good work. Please keep it up. And then they would address it to the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan with the correct address and put a stamp on it.
Oh.
And then Ellis said, and now if next week you come in not having done your homework, I'm going to drop this in the mailbox.
Oh, wow.
That's the Ku Klux Klan technique. So I decided, that's the one that'll work. So I tried that with a patient, and he came back the next week not having done his homework. And I didn't have the heart to send it to the Ku Klux Klan, so I gave it back to the patient and gave up with that technique. But the only thing that ever worked was negotiating it at the initial evaluation, having them fill out that memo, the concept of self-help, sign the contract, the number of days per week, the number of minutes per day, fill out all the reasons why you don't want to do homework, and then after negotiating all this, do you want to stick with me and do homework? Or would you rather, find someone who would not make you accountable? Mm-hmm. And that cleared up an awful lot of the headaches in my practice, and actually morphed into team therapy.
Well, how would you do the gentle ultimatum with someone who's anxious?
Well, all patients have to agree to do homework. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I say to the anxious patients, and again, I do this at the initial evaluation before we're into a therapeutic relationship. And it depends on the kind of anxiety that they have. But I tell them something like, okay, you've got social anxiety. This is my favorite thing to treat. I've had 5 kinds of social anxiety myself, so I know how to transform your life. I can change your dating life from rags to riches. I can show you how to give talks that are effective, speeches, if you like, or how to socialize with strangers and do really fantastic and then get over your fears. And I have at least 30 techniques, 40 techniques that could potentially be helpful to you. You're going to love all of them. They're really cool. They're really fun. But one of them you're going to hate. And that's called exposure. And here's like the kinds of exposure techniques I'm going to ask you to do. And they're going to be terrifying. And if you want, I'll be right with you when you're doing them. I'll walk with you to the gates of hell. But if you want me to cure you of social anxiety disorder, or whatever it is, a panic attack or whatever form of anxiety, PTSD, OCD, but whatever it is, you're going to have to include exposure as one of the 10 or 15 or 20 techniques that we use. Because if you refuse exposure, it will be impossible for me to cure you. And if you're willing to use exposure, there's almost nothing that can prevent our success. Now, exposure alone won't cure you, but it has to be part of the package. Now, if you have social anxiety, I might, for example, insist that you smile and say hello to 10 strangers a day for the next week. That's called smile and hello practice. And believe me, for some anxious patients, that's like walking across hot coals. That's terrifying. And then I might have you do self-disclosure. And if you want, I'll go out and I'll do these with you. But I might ask you to go up and approach 5 strangers a day and say something like, and we can do it in today's session if you like. We can start right now. Go outside and do it right now, and go up and say to a stranger, could I stop you for just a second? I want to let you know something that I've been hiding my whole life. Ever since I'm little, I've been shy, and I've been so damn ashamed of it. I've been hiding it. And because I get nervous around strangers, and I'm nervous right now around you, but I decided to stop being ashamed and to start telling people. And that's why I'm telling you, and I'm so grateful that you stopped and let me talk to you. And when I've done this with patients, they have gotten such great responses from people. But you'd have to agree to do this if you want me to work with you. And again, I'll be there with you, but I need to know today, is this something you're willing to do? And then we might do even more extreme things. You're afraid of making a fool of yourself in public, so we might go out and do shame attacking exercises together, and we'll take turns making fools of ourselves in public. We'll go to the Stanford shopping mall, and we can, lie down on the cement and tell people that this is just like being in Miami on the beach.
Well, what would you say if you said, I need to know if you today if you would be willing to do that. And the person says, I don't know, it sounds too scary. Can I think about it? Or
you can think about it as long as you like. Absolutely. But I'm going to take that as a no and tell you that there are an awful lot of therapists in the community that they won't ask this of you. And you can maybe talk more about your childhood or just have general talk therapy. But I want you to know I won't give you another appointment right now because I'm thinking that this does not appeal to you. But if you ever do change your mind and want to be cured, see, all I can offer you is quick, irreversible cures.
But that sounds
I can't offer you a long time talking about your past and staying anxious. But at any point that you decide that you'd be open to this, we've got a marriage made in heaven. Just get on the horn, give me a call, and we'll get started right away. That's how I'd handle it.
Okay.
And I
you present with so much confidence. It gives me as the patient a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Well, it gives me a lot of confidence because I know if we use these tools, we're not going to fail, and if we don't use them, we're not going to succeed. So that's how I deal with the exposure. And there's two people who are terrified of exposure. You know who they are?
No.
Well, patients is one.
Patients and therapists.
Yeah, therapists. They're terrified of exposure too. Most therapists won't use it. They're so terrified. Anxiety is kind of infectious. And
absolutely.
People, oh my gosh, this person's so fragile. I don't want to push them over the brink. But
I'm on another listserv of not team therapists, of forensic psychologists. And somebody posted something the other day about that nobody does exposure anymore. It's been brushed aside as something that's not worthwhile.
Yeah. There's a lot of resistance from therapists and from the general public alike. But that's how I set it up, and I just love treating anxiety because nothing is more rewarding to me to take a person, cure them of a panic attack in 1-2 hour session. People have had maybe decades of failed therapy for horrifying panic attacks when they think they're going crazy or they think they're going to have a heart attack and die. And there are such powerful techniques for all forms of anxiety. But in all forms of anxiety, and the Buddha said this 2,500 years ago, that you've got to confront your worst fear if you want enlightenment. Because only then will you discover that the monster has no teeth. So that's the thing for anxiety. And then the thing for relationship problems, that's the third.
The ultimatum for relationship problems?
Yeah. And you know what it is.
That
right?
You have to take responsibility.
Yeah, you have to. Well, there's two things. I mean, first, you have to want to get close to the person you're complaining about. And, like a lot of people come to therapy to complain about their spouse or their brother or their neighbor, and they're not really asking for help. They just want you to collude with them and the idea that the other person's a loser and that they're, the helpless, morally superior victim. And I apologize if that sounds sarcastic, but that really is the way people see it in their minds. But what they have to agree to, if you want me to treat your relationship problem, you really want to get close to that person, that's great. But I have to tell you that one part of the treatment is going to be unpleasant for you because 80% of the time, the patient is convinced that the other person is to blame. And when I'm mad at someone, that's the way I feel too. And I'm just so sure of it. And I've developed this tool that you know very well, the relationship journal, that forces you to look at your own role in the problem. And it's a very simple tool, but it's powerful and profoundly disturbing to people because I can show anyone within 10 minutes to reveal to them exactly how they're forcing the person they're upset with to treat them in the way they're complaining about. So if your husband never listens, you'll discover that you force him not to listen. If your wife is always arguing or your partner is always arguing, you will discover that you're forcing them to argue. And I'll be able to show you with this relationship journal specifically what you do that causes this problem. And that's on the one hand great, because if you have the power to create an annoying situation for yourself, you have the power to transform that into a loving one. But the problem is examining your own role, seeing that you're to blame for something that you've been blaming the other person for, is extremely upsetting. When I do this for myself, it's painful. When I have to look at my own role, and I had a kind of a argument with my son, and we both got pretty heated about it. And I like, as you know, Rhonda, I just like to joke around all the time, and he was saying that sometimes my jokes are insensitive and hurtful. And I didn't see it, and it was so upsetting to me to hear this, and I didn't want to see it, and then I suddenly saw it, and I was able to tell him that he was right, and then we hugged, and the kind of heaven opened up a lot, and a beautiful, warm, loving relationship evolved. But it required the death of myself to see myself in a very negative and shocking light, and that's the third gentle ultimatum. If you want me to help you with your marriage, with your relationship with your boss, with whoever, I would want to know if you have the courage and the willingness to spend all of your energy examining your own role in the problem. Now, you say the other person is acting like a jerk. I'm 100% certain that's correct. People act like jerks all the time. The problem that I want to know is, are you willing to look at what you're doing that's feeding and fueling this other person's jerky behavior? Are you willing to take 100% of the responsibility for turning this thing around? But this is, politically loaded, because in our culture, it's almost like you're supposed to side with people that they're victims, and the other person is some kind of a beast and a bad person. But the problem with those formulations is they make you a victim of forces beyond your control. But if you're willing to look at your own role and to change yourself, you can often do dramatic things, even with the worst of people. I've even had people who I trained in the 5 Secrets, and you're aware of this, who actually were kidnapped by a woman kidnapped by a serial killer who was on the way to kill her, rape her and kill her and murder her. And she looked at her own role and her interaction with him, and he started crying. She reacted to him radically differently from anyone he'd ever kidnapped. And he started crying and turned himself in to the police. They pulled up at a stoplight, and there was a police car. And he said, "You better tell that police officer who I am." And she did, and he was arrested. You can do fantastic things if you're willing to change the way you would ordinarily relate to the person you're not getting along with. But most people won't do it, huh?
But aren't you talking? I mean, that the serial killer example is incredibly, powerful, and that woman must have been so talented in her language skills and her use of the 5 Secrets. In an average relationship outside of that, like the last time I got into a fight with Michael, he called me an asshole, and I was like, "How can you call me an asshole? You're the asshole."
Yeah, that sounds effective. That's how we're trying to teach you, folks. So try that, but your next time you have an argument with a loved one, and everything will work out fine.
I mean, eventually I saw my role in it, that I was being a jerk, and we had the same, transformative experience that you had with Eric.
That's beautiful.
But what if somebody's in a relationship? And I know I'm not trying to be oppositional, but if someone is like a woman is in an abusive relationship with somebody who wants to have power and control and dominate her, I'm not sure if the use of the 5 Secrets would do anything to help change that dynamic. And maybe her best option would be to leave in a safe.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's before we go into any help technologies, that's the interpersonal decision making. Does the patient really want to make a stab at improving this relationship, and does the therapist agree that would be a sound thing to do? Because oftentimes people with severe narcissistic tendencies and sociopathic tendencies, no matter what you do, you're not going to change them.
Right.
But
You ask this interpersonal decision making.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's the best thing to leave. But if that's your decision, then it's 10 times more important to use the 5 secrets of effective communication. You know why?
To keep you safe.
Yeah, otherwise you'll be killed when you try to leave. Mm-hmm. So you have to disarm and stroke and do all those same things that you would learn to do if you were trying to improve a relationship with someone who was worth staying with, but you do them on the way out the door rather than hoping that this rattlesnake is going to turn into a loving puppy or something. It's sadly probably not going to happen. But at any rate, that's kind of the three gentle ultimatums, and I guess the take home messages would be several, and you probably have some too. But one of them is that in team therapy, we believe in free will and accountability. And to tell the patient at the beginning of treatment, here's the kind of therapy we offer. And we're excited about it because the techniques are powerful and the potential for healing and changing your life is powerful. But you will have to do certain things in your role as a patient. We hope you'll do them because I really want to work with you. But if it's not your cup of tea, God bless you. I totally understand, and doing that in a gentle and non-hostile way. And many mental health professionals refuse this approach because the urge to rescue, the therapist narcissism, the therapist codependency gets in the way. And for me, it got in the way for 6-7 years before I finally figured this out.
And one other thing that you've mentioned before that you haven't mentioned today is if we give somebody a gentle ultimatum and they leave therapy, people have to be confident that they'll have another patient to fill that slot because they're losing income.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. It's a conflict of interest. I once had a patient who, when I was starting to figure these things out, and she was the worst complainer I ever had. And I shouldn't say this. I mean, she's a human being, but she would just come and complain, and she turned everyone off. And her husband would even come to her with her sessions, and she had 2-hour sessions twice a week.
What? Wow.
And he would sit with her, and she was a full fee patient too. Wow. And so that could have gone on for years.
Yep.
And but she would complain about her father and her life, and she got her husband doing everything for her. And she didn't want to do psychotherapy homework. So one time I told her, I said, I'm really kind of relieved that you don't do psychotherapy homework, because if you did, the problem is you'd probably start recovering. And then there'd be all this awful stuff for you. Like you might have to start working around the house and doing things. You might have to get a part-time job. And it's really helpful for me too, because, I really like you and you're a full fee patient, and I get 2 double sessions every week at full fee, and you help stabilize my income. Mm-hmm. So I really hope you'll continue not doing your psychotherapy homework. Mm-hmm. And she came back the next week with a whole bunch of psychotherapy homework done. Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend that sarcastic approach that I took, but because I was pretty frustrated with her. In that case, it worked. But that's the type of thing. It is a conflict of interest. And I know therapists who nurse the same patient along for months, years, sometimes for more than a decade. And the therapist likes it because you have this person to connect with in the long term and feel close to and go and talk to. The therapist likes it because you like the patient and you kind of like that money pouring in. But to me, it's kind of a conflict of interest. But mm-hmm. You're right. if you use TEAM, if you learn TEAM, that's not all there is to TEAM. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But if you learn TEAM, you have powerful tools for rapid recovery. I got a complaint about that from Sonny Choi this week in our Tuesday group. He says, David, I'm still curing people in 3-4 sessions, and I need a ton of referrals. So if any of you are in Northern California area or anywhere in California, he could do teletherapy. Sonny Choi has a sliding fee scale. He's in your institute now.
Yes, he's in
and he's a brilliant guy, and he's not trying to scalp anybody, and he's just phenomenal. And so go to Rhonda's treatment center, Feeling Great therapycenter.com. And is he on there? Is Sonny?
Yes, Sonny Choi.
Yeah, Sonny Choi. And I think he's got his own website too.
Yeah, so there's a link to his website up from ours.
Yeah. But
awesome.
and that's the kind of problem we all want to have, needing patients because we're curing people so quickly.
Okie dokie, Smokey.
Yeah, okie dokie, Smokey.
I think we're good for today.
Give me some dim sum. I haven't had any in a long time because of the COVID thing. Yeah, well, always fun chatting with you, Rhonda, and I really enjoyed today's podcast. I hope our listeners enjoyed it too, and weren't shocked that we're saying it's my way or the highway.
Well, because we did it with such gentle compassion and
that's the teaching
respect.
point. Therapy is an art form. It's just not some simple thing you can implement blindly. It has to be done with skill and compassion and grace, really.
Yeah, I like that, with grace. Because you want to be the therapist who helps people change their life forever. And I want to do that too.
Yeah, or at least for a period of time, and then know what to do when the relapses come.
Yeah, well, that's changing it forever. Because
that's right.
What to do.
I agree.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time.
Okay. Bye-bye. And after the podcast just now, you and I, Rhonda, were just chatting about how we did and teaching points and things like that. And we thought of one more potential teaching point. And it's a Buddhist one. And a lot of the therapy I do is wrapped up in certain philosophical or spiritual principles from different religions or spiritual paths. And a lot of it is wound together closely with Buddhism, but the Buddhists say we're all one. And that's true when it comes to the gentle ultimatum and making patients accountable, because you see, the main thing we're trying to combat here is patient resistance. So that rapid recovery is possible. But therapists fight against this as much as patients fight against this, because everyone wants to kind of shine the patient along with niceness and working long term, and eventually things will change. And in my experience, that approach has never been effective. But it took me 8 years to change myself before my patients could change. I had to be willing to give up my narcissism and my codependency and my belief I could save everyone in order to make patients accountable.
So
go ahead.
You're saying that the therapist has to change in order to support the client or the patient changing.
Yeah, the patient can't change until the therapist changes. The therapist has to change first, and then the patient can suddenly change. And again, that's just another example of the Buddhist idea that we're all one. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
Yeah, that's good. That was definitely my experience too.
Yeah, cool. Thank you again, Rhonda.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Everybody.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.